All right.
All right.
This is the Bowls of Life podcast. I'm Virginia.
And I'm Tyler. As we've gone through life, we've learned something important.
Life is messy. It gets complicated.
But we've also learned that we can create tools to help us jump into the mess of life and make an adventure of it.
Welcome to our messy adventures of faith, family, and food.
All right. 3 episodes back into the podcast. Kind of got our feet wet again.
Yes.
You excited?
Yes. I love it.
Yes. Why do you like podcasting?
Because I get to talk.
Oh, and you just like to hear yourself talk?
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
Honestly,
who does it?
I was in that scholarship program, aka a pageant, in high school, and I remember everybody hated the interview portion, but I actually loved it because I got to talk.
And you did rock it.
And not only did they question, they asked you questions about yourself, but they also asked you questions to see if you know, like, current events. And it was kind of like, let me show you what I know. But
did you
that's
show 'em?
prideful, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah. What was your question? I know you remember. You've told me before. Which, either time.
Are you talking about on stage or in the interview?
Yeah. I forgot the difference in the interview and the stage. What was the stage question? Hit the stage question.
Should it was like, should IVF? I'm actually afraid to even say.
Oh, you don't want to get into it. Got it. Okay, we'll keep moving.
Oh gosh, it was actually a pretty controversial one.
Yeah,
it was about.
Weirdly, they asked a lot of those.
They used to. They don't anymore.
Oh.
But it was about IVF and stuff like that being regulated. And Octomom had just been a thing.
Sure.
If you remember.
Yep. I
the
remember
mom
Octomom.
who had 8 babies. Now, I'm not talking about John and Kate plus 8.
Yeah.
Because that was
They had 6.
They had a 6. But yeah, well, technically it was 7. And then, anyways, the Octomom was like a thing, and she was like not married or something, and so it was like a big old controversy. But anyways, so I answered that fairly emphatically and like matter of factly. And that's honestly what they're looking for. They don't care what your answer is. They just want to make sure you can confidently answer a question. But in the state program, it was a terrible question. And I was talking about this the other day, and I was like, that was so stupid. I would have rather been asked a spontaneous question about politics.
Yeah. You changed your answer on the spot, if I remember right, didn't you?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I changed it because it was like a question they gave you ahead of time. And it was a frou-frou fluffy question.
Yep.
And I didn't know what to say. And literally in the line going up to the microphone, I changed my answer, and that was a bad idea. I should have pulled the type 1 diabetes card, and I didn't.
Yeah, you should always pull the type 1 diabetes card. Yeah. You don't pull it enough. I think I pull it for you sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we already talked about why I feel the way I feel about being a type 1 diabetic and being categorized, so, in the last episode.
We did.
So,
That's fair.
I don't think I have to go there.
What are we talking about this go-round?
Well, the resources that we want to give you guys, to help, make an adventure out of this messy life. We're going to have a tool for our friends today that are listening.
Yeah. You're looking at me. Okay, sweet. I'll drive into it. We kind of thought it was time to hop back into a series, I guess you could call it, since we've now got our feet wet again. And so we're going to walk through a book called Habits of the Household. Personally, I think this may be the book I've read that most connects with all of our faith, family, and food tagline.
Yeah. I read this book first, actually.
You did.
And I think I got it from our church family, our Little Life family, when we had one of our babies. Can't remember which one.
I want to say it was Ezra's dedication.
Ezra. Yeah, because they ask you what book do you want, and I was really looking forward to this one. And yeah, it's called Habits of the Household by Justin Whitmel Early. And it's practicing the story of God in everyday family rhythms. And
yes.
It really does kind of encompass a lot of the things that we do, that we want to do,
right.
and that we talk about here at Bowls of Life. And also want to equip not only ourselves, but our listeners with these types of ideas. So we're going to talk about this book, but we're going to do something a little differently. And I like to think of it as kind of like a book club.
Yes. We're not necessarily looking to give you an audio book of the book by any stretch. We'll kind of introduce the concepts chapter to chapter, talk about the big picture idea, and then the hope is to dive into how we are or are not doing that thing and just kind of discuss what it looks like in our life a bit.
Yeah, so this is a book that we do recommend. So again,
Yes.
we're recommending tools, like we said earlier. That's kind of what we want to do here at Bowls of Life. And so this particular tool, this book, is something that we are going to recommend to you, but also through this podcast and these episodes, we're going to talk through it. And it's going to be like a book club. We're going to be having conversations about it. So that also means you may want to buy this book.
Yes.
You may get you may get through this first episode, or you may get a couple episodes in and decide that this is really something you want to dig deeper into, and buy this book. And if you do, then you can listen, because we're going to do it kind of chapter by chapter.
Yes, that's the goal.
That's the goal. And so probably weekly, that's the plan, to have the episodes out so that we can, share them chapter by chapter. And you guys can be reading the books along with us, technically. But I remember just reading this book and being like, wow, this is everything I feel like I needed in a book. Except, I said this earlier today when I was kind of refreshing my brain. I kind of wish there was like a mom version, because this is written by a dad.
Yeah.
And there are kind of other books out there written by moms, but this particular one, I'm like, I wish his wife would come and write her side of the story. So so speaking of habits of the household, our little one has just woken up, so
We'll take a brief pause.
And we're back.
We're back. So we want to introduce you to kind of the big picture concept of what habits of the household is about. When you think about habits, probably one of the most significant things about any household is what is considered to be normal. What's normal in your house? Is what's normal healthy for your family? Is what's normal helping your family grow in faith and food and in family? Things like that. Our routines are kind of who we become. They create our story, our culture as a family. You've got a lot of habits in your house. They just might not be ones you chose. A lot of things just kind of, these rhythms develop because it's what made sense at that moment, or it was kind of what your continual knee-jerk reaction to certain situations are. And so those are the kind of things that this book digs into, is those natural rhythms. Like you got a thought. Go.
Yeah, and I think that I don't think that a lot of people, because even us, like, we had to do it too, like, stop and think about what are our habits, and not even realize that everything that you do is your habit, is a habit. Yep. And it doesn't have to be something that you wrote in stone as a New Year's resolution or anything. It's just what you do in your household. And I think, and I've said this a lot here recently, just in my head, and maybe occasionally to you, Tyler, but like, I think what we do is just like, we go through life and we just do the things that we do. We just do these normal things because that's how it's been done.
Yep.
And we don't question why.
Yeah.
We don't question the origin of that type of stuff. We don't, stop and think like, is this really what I want to do? Because I think about how we made the choice for homeschool, and it's like, yeah, we could, do the normal thing and do the thing that we did as we were growing up.
That's what I was going to say. A lot of the things are based on just what you did growing up. And sometimes that can kind of be a tension point in a marriage, is you guys did two different things growing up. But yes, a lot of times you just do what either you did the first time or what you experienced growing up, or you may do the opposite of what you did growing up because you hated that so much.
Yeah, and so I think that it's like, we got to pause, and I think we just really need to pause and question our habits and what we're doing, and really maybe just have a reason why you choose to do those things.
Yeah.
I'm talking about as little as like how you get out of the house in the morning.
Yes. Oh gosh, yeah. And so it's habits like that if you really dig into what they're teaching you, like, what is this habit ingraining in you? Well, it's ingraining getting out of the house in the morning. It's just like efficiency. We wake up, we got to get breakfast ready, get everybody dressed, get brush teeth, and get in the vehicle by this time. We have to be that efficient, and so it's ingraining, like, morning times, they're about efficiency. And if things aren't going in an efficient manner, okay, well, now morning times are about frustration and about this lack of patience and this grating between us. And the habit that we have built, whether that's because of our wake-up time or because of whatever, it is now ingraining frustration and impatience with one another into us. And we just keep repeating that same process over and over again.
Yeah, it's not just a habit, it's the feeling around that area of time.
It's like every morning times are just, they're rough.
The environment, yeah.
That's the way you begin to think about morning because of the habits you have in your morning routine.
And I'll speak, and say like, we have slow mornings here, but that's also because our work schedule and our school schedule does not
allowed it.
it does not require we be out of the house at the crack of dawn.
Yeah, we're not trying to make it to the bus or the drop-off line at 7 a.m.
Right. So I've seen people talk about like how difficult mornings can be, but they're also trying to get out to the office at an early time, and they're also trying to get their kids to school at an early time. So we understand that like. Everybody, I guess that's my nuance there to say, like, this is going to be a different for everybody.
Yes, very much so. And he makes that caveat in the book as well, just kind of talking about whether that's your season of life, your age, the demographics, whatever, like the exact application points will look different.
Right.
It's the concept that he's trying to get across. I think I really like the way he talks about habits from a neuroscience point of view because he made it very understandable. Basically saying habits are like the low processing part of your brain. It's things that they just naturally they happen because there's literally like a route in your brain that it is just able to follow that track like a rut on a dirt road. It just follows that track and your brain isn't really having to do anything. It's just following the track, where you can be tying shoes or whatever while you're having a conversation and you're not thinking about tying your shoes. You've done that so many times that you can just tie your shoes and keep having this conversation right at the same time. And so he kind of talks about the fact that habits like that are difficult to break. Like,
it's muscle memory.
It's muscle memory. And because you didn't think yourself into that habit, you just practiced yourself into it. That means you're also not just going to think yourself out of it. Even if you have the desire to say, okay, I want to change how I do this or this, just thinking I desire to change it will never change it until you start practicing a different way of doing it.
Right. He says your heart and your head are not connected that way. That
yes.
Just because you think it doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think the way he said it was your head doesn't lead your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just interesting to kind of think about it that way. But the cool thing is, while building new habits rarely starts well, like it very rarely do you start with a new habit, especially if it's countering an old habit and you're just like, man, this is awesome, everything's going perfect. Eventually it will become normal when you continue to do it. No, it won't be normal at first, but all of a sudden one day it just will be, and that's just part of how it works. And habits are spiritually forming as well. I'd say a major part of your life with Jesus is your habits. Now, habits are not your life with Jesus. There are lots of other elements to it, but a lot of your life with Jesus is literally your habits. For me, I kind of think about praying in the middle of the day. For the longest time, that was a desire, like, hey, I want to make sure I'm praying throughout the day. I'm thinking about different people in my life that I can be praying for, or just spending some quiet time with God, not actively using words in my head or outside. Like, I'd like that to be a part of my life, but it wasn't. It wasn't that I didn't think it was important or didn't know that I should be doing it. It wasn't habit. I was always focused on the other things. And then I adopted the practice of, after lunch, I go for a quick walk. And that's where I spend some time praying as I'm walking. And now I know that every day, or most days, I'm going to, after lunch, go for a walk. And I'm going to pray on that. Mm-hmm. And so it's not that I don't want to pray on other days when I don't go for that walk. It's just that's not part of my habit. I'm in other routines doing other things, and while I'm doing those other things, praying isn't just in that natural rut where when I go for that walk, I'm just going to pray. It's going to happen because it's part of my habit. Now, habits don't fix everything, but they do change us. As we're, especially inside our household, as we're changing like our knee-jerk reaction to things, we'll start to look at different ways or understand different ways that God's grace is trying to guide our hearts and our children's heart into new patterns of life.
So yeah, I think we have to go back to that. Awareness is always very much like number one, right?
Yes.
So I think we have to stop and go, okay, but why are we telling you this? Or why should you even stop and think about your habits? Why should there even be something to change? Mm-hmm. And that's where you take like, a look at your life and go, is this the way that we want? Is this the way that we want our life to go? What is this doing for our children? Mm-hmm. Is this how we want our house to feel? Or, so on and so forth. So I'm just bringing it back around. I'll probably say that over and over again, but just as a reminder, like, why? Why are we doing this? Oh, because we want to really look at and see, like, is this where we want our family to go?
Yes, yeah. And the thing is, as parents, we're formed by our habits, and our habits are forming our kids. And so that's one of the things that we talked about a lot through this book is he's not necessarily looking at you to change your kids' habits per se. It's more about focusing in on ourselves and the things we're choosing to do as we're, one, without our kids, but also with our kids.
Yeah, and this is one thing that I do as a dietitian and working with families and food. I tell the parents, this is with any parenting, is like what we do is a model for our children. And so I just to use the example, like when I have parents who come to me that are concerned about their children's eating, whether it because of an eating disorder or just some habits that have formed over time, I remind them that we have to model as their parent. I don't care if they're 17 or if they're 7, but we have to model to our children
what we want them
what
doing.
What we want to see in them. And so a lot of times that means the parents have to have a pretty big shift in what they do and how they think about food and eating.
And how they talk about it.
And how they talk about food in their bodies and all that, because they're not realizing how big of an impact it's having on their children. Not to say that they're the cause of anything, but just it has to be, it's a family affair.
Yeah.
It is a whole family affair.
It absolutely is.
So to bring that back around, like it's not just food, it's all of our habits. It's all of our things in our household. Our kids, we are their main source of figuring out life, like learning about how to live in the world. As parents, we're the ones who are providing that source of learning the most than anywhere, no matter where they go during the day. And so what we model is what they're going to end up doing.
Yes, absolutely, yes. And so when you're thinking through your own habits and the habits of your family in entirety, you're stewarding the hearts of your family. Now, if you're getting into some habits, especially ones that are very different, or you're trying to do some more spiritual, very clearly spiritually connected habits, truthfully, with kids, especially the younger they are, the more nonsensical they'll act around them. They'll be silly and they'll do dumb things. There's a lot of humor. And maybe when you get into the teenage years, it'll be a lot more grumpy, pushback, I don't want to do this. And he talks about that a bit in the book, especially in the intro, of how he was trying to implement a couple of things with his kids. And for a while, it was just this weird thing. But then one night, and it was a part of his bedtime routine, there's kids just kind of looked at him and was like, hey,
they were asking for the blessing.
They were asking.
Yeah, he gave a blessing every night to the kids, and it was a certain thing that he said and a certain thing that they responded with. And yeah, one night the kids were like, can we get our blessing now? And he was like, okay, it's sticking.
Let's go.
It's sticking. Yes. And we've kind of experienced that a little bit with Luna and some things. A bedtime ritual that we kind of do. We have a phrase that we say to her, and she's come to where she we pray and we have a phrase, and she basically leads it out. Sometimes she'll lead out the prayer, or she'll say the phrase along with us. So yeah.
Yeah, and so he'll often refer in the books to habits as not just being actions or routines, but being liturgies that form our hearts. And if you're unfamiliar with liturgy, the formal sense of it, it's a pattern of worship that we repeat over and over, hoping that that pattern will draw us into worship and form us into the image of what we worship, of who we worship. And so he uses a lot of liturgies in the form of like, I'd call them sticky statements or soundtracks, things that you can say easily, memorable phrases you can say over and over. Mantras, that's a word for it. Yeah, he uses a lot of those alongside the habits that he desires to become more natural. One, just to help him think about it, but also if it's easy to remember, that means it's more likely you'll actually implement it.
Yeah, I mean, we memorize songs so easily, and we learn things through song. It's kind of a similar concept. It's just not with music. It's just speaking it, I mean, it might even have to be speaking it, but an actual action. It doesn't have to be a verbal thing.
Yeah. And so again, all of this is good, and we're glad you're here and listening to this, but ultimately the goal isn't for you to hear about these things, it's for you to actually put them into practice. That's something we're tasked in Scripture with, is not just to be hearers, but to be doers, to live out these kind of things. Now, what this will look like for you, you have to work through and figure out. We probably can't do that for you. But the goal is for us to be able to practice these things, to change our households and shape our households in a way that aligns our heads and our hearts so that we don't just know the right thing to do, but we also love doing the right thing. And he kind of talks about that being the driving force behind this for him, and hopefully for us, is a desire to ultimately love God and love others really well.
Yeah.
He talks about thinking of your home as a school of love. That was something tied back to some of the older monastic traditions, where what he means by a school of love is your home is where your kids are learning how to love God and love others well. And I found that such a good phrase. I'd forgotten it was in there, and when I read it again, I was like, oh, that's gold.
Yeah, and that's where he says we take that out into the world, or we bring others into it. And so their school of love, where they're learning how to love God and love others well, they're also going to be taking that out into the world. Or if they invite someone in, and how do we help people learn to know who Jesus is? Well, we show them the love of Jesus. Yeah,
with any habit that you're looking to break, you have to give a counter habit. We have been formed into who we are right now. The things that you have done in your life, the things you choose to do on a regular basis, they have formed you into exactly who you are, and your house has been formed into exactly what it is.
You are what you do.
You are what you do. That's very true. And so we have to develop radical habits in order to help us not continue to be conformed to the world around us, but to be radically transformed. Yes, that's Romans 12. He's very much riffing on it in the book quite often. And so if we don't choose our habits carefully, we're just going to fall into the normal default easy thing for us, the normal default easy thing for the world, because, hey, who wants to stick out like a sore thumb if you're not doing that for a purpose? Now, when you have a purpose, when you have a desire that I am doing these things because it is transforming me into a person who loves God well and loves others well, and as I am transformed into somebody who loves God and loves others well, it's also transforming my kids into kids who will eventually become adults that love God and love others as well.
Yeah.
And so our best parenting, as he wrote it in there, our best parenting comes when we think less about being parents of children, and we're thinking more about being children of God.
Yeah, and he also talks about one of my most favorite things he says is like when you we parent our children, but God parents us.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that phrase sticks out to me. This is maybe a little, I won't say off topic, but kind of
Go with
rabbit trail. But when we think about parenting our children, again, like that's one of those things that we do it because that's how we were raised.
Mm-hmm.
We do things because of how we were raised, and not to say that
you may not do the exact same thing. You may do the exact opposite thing because you didn't like how you were raised. How you were raised.
Yeah, so I think that if we looked more to how God parents us, we would probably be a little bit different in some of our parenting, depending on how, what our parenting tactics are. But I think if we thought about how God parents us, we would make a lot of changes in how we treat our kids.
Yep. And so through the book, he covers 10 different habits. He actually walks through the day, starting with wake up and ultimately ending. I actually think it ends after bedtime. I think that one's where he starts to talk about marriage, because typically that's when you have a minute to hang out with your spouses after your kids go to sleep. I'm not 100%, but he covers 10 broad habits, and he puts them into 3 categories: forming parents, forming families, and forming children. So on forming parents, it's parenting your children because it's not just about what you do in their lives. It's about first the work God is doing in your life. We have to have spiritual rhythms, become the kind of people God calls us to be before we can help our children become the people that God is calling them to be. The next one, forming children. Ultimately, parenting is the job of forming children. Like that's the goal as a parent, is you are forming your child into the adult they will come. I always appreciate that about, I think it's Parent Q, who has a shirt and a slogan, and they say forming adults, forming humans. And I just always appreciate it's not about this kid right here, right now. It is obviously about taking care of them, but in the grand scheme, it's about raising an adult who is capable of X, Y, and Z, who lives like X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And so forming children, it's a wonderful, scary, and an altogether too much endeavor, which is why we need the help of each other, yes, but ultimately the help of God in order to form our children.
Yeah, and becoming a parent is a totally sanctifying thing.
Yes.
Because when you become a parent, and probably many of you are parents listening, but when you become a parent, like you really are confronted with yourself.
Yep.
And your own sin.
Yeah, there's a story I'll probably tell somewhere along this podcast about me in the middle of the night and Ezra in sleep and all the things.
Yeah, and even if you think you're doing a pretty good job at it, things will come up that will remind you that you are still a sinner and you still need God. I was humbled yesterday. I told you about that. Didn't wake up. I'd been asking God to help me wake up early, and I didn't really want to ask that, but I managed to wake up a little early one day. Then I was like, well, what's the point? Like, I'm not going to do anything. And then later in the day, I was like, God, I need you. I need you today. And and it was almost like, well, you should have woke up early and read your Bible.
You were about to say he told you, and you shied away from it. You can say the Spirit was kind of prompting you.
Yeah.
He did not audibly speak, for anyone who's concerned that Virginia's a prophet.
Right. But no. He told me. The Spirit led me to remember that I did not wake up when I should have, and probably immersed myself in some grace-filled words from the Bible so that I could be more grace-filled as the day went on.
That's good.
So, yeah.
That's good. The last category was forming families. And that's really the intersection of forming parents and forming children is our family culture. Whether you're conscientious? Say it.
Conscientious.
Okay, good.
You got me.
Neither one of us can say it. It's fine. Whether you're paying close attention and you recognize that your family has a culture or not, it does. There is something that people, when they come into your family circle, whether that's literally in your house or just they're around your family, they come into your culture. They're invited into it. And it's also true that as you separate as a family and you go in your different directions to work, school, whatever, that you are taking that culture of what is normal with you. And the same is true for your kids. They're taking what is normal to your family and they are going out to places with it. And so as he talks about forming families, it's with the mindset that you are inviting people into that culture or you are going out and taking that culture to other people. And I love the gospel implications of that.
Yeah, because we talk about the family, the kingdom of God, and that's what we're doing with our own little families. Like Jesus says over and over again, the kingdom of God is near. The kingdom of God is here. I feel like I've said this on the podcast before, earlier episodes, but the kingdom of God is here in your household right now.
Come on.
So if
Preach.
you don't think that the kingdom of God is here yet, it's here and it's in your household. And if you are not reflecting gospel-minded manners and habits and things in your household, then why do you think that you're going to be able to take it to the world,
right,
and bring people into the family of God?
Yep.
If you're not even attempting it in your own household,
well,
we're obviously not good. Are going to be great at it,
right?
But
and that's not even necessarily just the talking about it. It's not just like, hey, are you talking to your kids about Jesus? Yes, you should be talking to your kids about Jesus. Let's be clear, very much so. But like your ability to live it out. If you can't live it out with the people you love most, and hopefully that is your family, how are you supposed to live that out with the guy who votes different from you and is very in your face about it? How are you supposed to live that out with the coworker who literally never does their job and you have to pick up their slack all the time? How are you supposed to live that out with your in-laws who just grate on everything about you? To be clear, I like my in-laws. But I'm just trying to use an analogy we know.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we can't live it out in the home, it's a problem. So those are kind of the big three categories he puts it in. We'll walk through this We'll walk through it in the order the book covers it. I like a few last thoughts I wrote down from the book. One, he talks about the fact that the greatest spiritual work happens in the normal moments of domestic life. Or the way I like to talk about it is, whether it's in the mundane, the monstrous, or the majestic moments of life, I think the biggest spiritual formation really happens in the mundane. And it comes out and it's visible when things are going wrong. It comes out and it's visible when things are going right. It's really in those mundane, just domestic moments of life when we are being spiritually formed. And he also says parenting is an unceasing spiritual battle.
Yeah.
How you feel about that?
Tired.
Yes.
I'm already exhausted.
But I like that he says, while God is using that battle to refine us, it's actually a battle God is winning for us.
Yeah.
We're a part of it. We're in the process, but we are not responsible for the win.
We're not the winners, yeah.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned it on the podcast before, but that someone said to you, it's not that God calls us to be successful, he calls us to be faithful, obedient and faithful. Yeah. And I appreciate that. If parenting has got to be a spiritual battle that's shaping me, that it's not a spiritual battle I'm actually responsible to win. It's just one I'm here to participate in.
So what do you feel like? I know we'll talk about more as we go, specifics, but when we think about our household, what are some habits that you can think of that we feel like we're doing right? And then what are some that we're like, oh, we probably could do better at that?
We have gotten better, or I've gotten better at making praying out loud with our kids a priority, at least at bedtime. We work on it at some other times. Some of that's just the fact that we have toddlers, but I appreciate daycare teaching our kids the blessing. They sing it, whether Luna likes to sing it funny or Ezra likes to scream it at the top of his lungs, or just sing it for the next 20 minutes in the car, just randomly. He thought of it, and now he's singing it.
Over and over again.
I love that. Trying to think of some others. We're still working on and learning how to try and make Bible reading devotion kind of thing a more regular, consistent rhythm. I think some of that will get better just naturally through you homeschooling.
Yes.
I hate that means I won't necessarily always get to be as much of a part of it, but we'll find a rhythm. Work. Yeah, we'll find a rhythm that makes it a part. We found a little
Bible. My mom had it. It's like a more toddler Bible than the Adventure Bible for kids. And we had bought the Adventure Bible for kids, but then I found this even more simplified version for toddlers.
It's NLT. I think it's First Touch is what that series is called, from my Lifeway days.
Oh, okay. Well, it's just like the Adventure Bible, but it's it's like on toddler, and it like gives the parents prompts and stuff. Yeah. So that was a really nice find. And it's worked really well because it tells you like little things you can do as you're reading it, like
point to your eyes.
Yeah, point your eyes, lift your hands. Jonah and the big fish or whatever. Like pretend you're swimming and all that kind of stuff. But we've tried to implement that, and I feel like I've just like tried thing again until we found that book. So I feel like that's been a good thing. And then I really do kind of so far love our bedtime liturgy that we have with our kids, and I'm always trying to figure out more things that we can do like that, but I really appreciate what we do for bedtime.
Yeah, no, it's good. And then we have some liturgies for the sake of staying within the verbiage that we use, especially with Luna, still getting there with Ezra some things like you can do hard things and stuff like that. That's not necessarily just overly spiritual, like telling her, hey, you can do hard things when she's crying because she has to pick up her toys and she hates picking up her toys. You can do hard things.
First time listener.
Those are things that, again, they're not overly spiritual, but they're forming her into the kind of person that we hope she'll be in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I took a notebook one time. I was like trying to write down some of those things because again, like some of those things just kind of pass you by. Like I didn't purposely. I just started saying first time listener, and I was like, I like that. Let's roll with it.
Let's be a first time listener. So that's one of the things I say as I'm leaving on days when they've been home for just you and all three of the kids. Like I look at Luna and say, hey, let's be a first time listener. Hey, let's be mommy's helper. Phrases like that just to remind her, like, hey, are you responsible to parent the other two siblings? No, but you are the big kid and you lead the way.
Yeah.
That's a new phrase. May have to start doing that.
I know you're the big kid. You can lead the way. Let's write that one down. Now there are some phrases that we have to stop and go, ooh, is that really the message that I want my daughter to be telling herself?
Yep. Yeah. Somebody's another kid at school the other day. Luna got a blister on the back of her foot, and she was kind of crying about it from her shoe, and one of the other kids, who's also 4 or 5, looked at her and said, oh, you're too beautiful to be crying. And as soon as Luna told me that, I was like, well, that's garbage. And I did not say that's garbage. I believe my response was, I'm not sure that's true. Everybody can cry. Yeah. It's okay to cry.
And in her little friend's defense, she was really being sweet. And
she was being sweet.
It was cute.
But I just didn't want that to be a message that Luna starts to ingrain.
Yes, didn't want that to become a truth, like that phrase, beauty is pain. I can't stand that phrase. And I was laughing about it the other day with a friend, like, oh gosh. But like that becomes a truth when you hear it and you think
even if you kind of know it's not true, you can still believe it in your bones.
Well, and I think it's funny how quickly just a phrase like that can become your truth. Like a core belief, if you will. Come on, Inside Out. We need to watch that second one just as parents.
Yeah, we haven't seen it yet.
So we can make those references a little more. I have used that in counseling sessions, and I haven't even seen the second one yet, but I've used it.
Yep.
But anyways, like how fast it can become your core belief just because a friend said it, or a parent, especially if a parent said it. And I like to think about this, and I'm gonna tell on myself, just so again that we're being real here. One of the things that just really bothers me is when my child grabs my hand and starts to pull me somewhere.
That does really bother you.
I don't know why, but it feels captive, and I don't like it.
You are the trigger beam at that moment.
I'm like, give me back my hand. And and I mean, that sounds like a terrible thing, so y'all are judging me out there, it's fine. But the thing is like, I started thinking about it, and I was like, I don't want my child to think that I don't want her to touch me, that I don't want to come with her and see the thing that she's trying to show me that's probably,
Look at this leaf on the wall.
Yeah.
I bet my friend put it there the other day.
Yeah, that's like totally silly. So I have to coach myself. Like, no, I don't want my hand to be jerked off my, body, but I have to be mindful not to show repulsion or like annoyance when that happens, so that my child does not begin to believe that I don't want to be where she is. Mm-hmm. So I'm telling on myself there so that y'all understand that we are real and that we have our own things that we need to work on, and that is why we read books like this. Yes. And that is why we try to live it out.
It's far from the only one on our shelf.
Right. And it's also why we talk about it on our podcast and together so that we can help others. Yes. Like, we can do this together.
Yep.
So that you're not doing it alone, friends. So
two more thoughts from author as we wrap this up, and then I want to hear from you on food in just a second. Okay. This isn't about legalism of having the perfect habits for your family. It's like, oh, if we do all these perfect things, like, then everybody will know how perfectly Christian we are. No, that's garbage. Get out of here. It's about caring for your family while recognizing that having or not having good spiritual habits doesn't make God love you any more or any less. Like, this isn't that kind of thing. This isn't about performance. It's not about making God care more and more about you because you're now doing the right things. It's just about caring for your family. That's our hope here. And we genuinely, in our core belief, and frankly, I've seen it happen in real life, recognize that a massive part of caring for our family is helping them understand how to love God, and through loving God, understand how to love others. And so that's why our habits aren't changing God's love for us, but it is that God's love for us can and should change our habits.
And so he reminds us, the reader, of that at the end of every chapter. Yes. And we will also try to do a good job of reminding our listeners of that truth as well.
Yeah, I believe he uses almost exactly the same phrase at the end. It may actually be that one at the end of every chapter, as just a little liturgy nod of, man, our habits won't change God's love for us, but God's love for us can and should change our habits.
Absolutely.
So we're going to pretty excited to walk through this with you guys. We've talked a lot about food and family. We've talked a lot about faith and family, and I want to talk about food. Virginia, hit me with that food one.
Yeah, so before I talk about it, I just wanted to say, if you heard some noises like smacking, crying, pooting,
because she definitely did.
Yeah, Stella over here has been making some noises.
Oh, was that Stella that pooted? I thought it was you, sorry. Just kidding, as Luna would say.
Just kidding. I'm not blaming it on her. It's for real. She's over here making lots of noises, and I think these microphones pick up a good bit. So excuse those things. We are just doing real life over here with the baby. I'm nursing her while we're talking. So, food. Okay, so a recipe that has become a staple one in our household. And if you're a person who has a hard time following recipes as they're spoken, that's okay. Don't worry. Eventually we'll get some of these on the website.
And then we'll link them. We'll go backwards.
Yeah, we'll go back and link them in the show notes. But this one's a super easy one, and it's so versatile. You can, change it up pretty easily with what you have or what you bought that week. But first thing is that you need to have some link sausage. So sausage that is, you buy it in a link form, and we typically get the
casing. Yeah,
we typically get the one that's obviously fully cooked already, and you just obviously reheat it up on the stove.
Chop it up.
You chop it up, and get whatever sausage it is that you like or deem the most fitting for your family. But you chop it up into little slices, and with that, I do onion and bell peppers. You do the colorful bell peppers and onions, and basically you just throw it in a pan with some butter. Butter is actually like a must-have, but if you don't have that and you have olive oil, that works too. And so you cook it up in the pan. Salt and pepper really is all you need. I don't add a lot of seasonings. You can throw some garlic in there if you want to. Garlic and onion powder if you want that too. But you cook all that up together in one skillet, okay? Now here's the thing where it gets really versatile. You can serve it with potatoes. So you can do sliced potatoes, diced potatoes, roasted potatoes, mashed potatoes. How does he say it in Lord of the Rings?
Oh, man. You can boil them, mash them, put them in a stew.
Yep. So all of the potatoes, French fries, whatever. So you can, serve it with the potatoes. You can even cook the potatoes in the skillet, however you like them. I've also served it with cheese grits, which were really yummy.
Yep.
And over rice or quinoa is another yummy way to eat this meal as well. Our favorite is with some type of potato.
Yeah.
But and the cheese grits was really yummy one time too. But yeah, sausage, onions, bell peppers, and then whatever carbohydrate you want to put it on top of or put it with. You mix it all together, cook it up. It is really delicious. And we eat it fairly often.
Probably. It may not be once every week, but it's probably once every week and a half.
Yeah, and as far as and it's just easy. That's one of the reasons why we've been doing it so often. But,
yep.
And I'll say this, my kids don't particularly love bell peppers. They did when they were really little, like baby, when they were still being baby-led weaning. But I'll just say this for those of you who are like, my kids are going to eat that. This provides a safe food for kids because it's a potato or, again, like a mashed potato or a rice, which most kids eat that pretty easily. And the sausage. Typically, kids will eat sausage like that fairly easily. At least ours do. So my kids can fill up on the others and they can skip over the bell peppers. And that's quite all right. I'm not going to pressure them to eat it. They get full.
They'll get there.
Yeah.
I'll get there. Awesome. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Here's some things you can do for us as we're wrapping up this podcast. Make sure you like, rate, review, subscribe to it, share the podcast, whether that's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Facebook, Instagram. Those are the ones we're on, but you can do it anywhere else. YouTube, that as well. Make sure you give us some love that way. You can head to our website, bowlsoflife.com. It recently got a makeover, and by makeover, I mean it's literally a whole new site, and I think it's top-notch. If I have to toot my own horn, I absolutely will, and job. I did. So yeah, there's lots of resources on there designed to help you make an adventure out of faith, family, and food.
Yep, and so while you're there, you can also consider becoming a supporter of Bowls of Life. You can give a one-time gift or you can become a monthly supporter so that we can continue giving you guys resources and content to better improve your food, family, and faith. I said that backwards, but
hey, I'm okay with it. And as we get some more of those monthly supporters or get any of them, we plan on having some exclusives come out as well for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's that secret content, right?
That's right, secret content.
Thanks for joining us on this journey of messy adventures in faith, family, and food.
We'll see you guys again soon.